I remember reading Glenn McGrath, the Australian fast bowler's autobiography, and he tells the story in the 2005 Ashes series, so one of the most famous cricket series of all time. Glenn McGrath actually stepped on a ball just before the first test and sprained his ankle. It looked like he was going to miss a lot of cricket at that time, and basically through his rehabilitation process, he visualised every night before he was going to bed little men that existed in his head, like little construction workers, and every night before he'd go to bed, the last thing he'd do is he'd visualise these little men working their way down his body to his ankle, to his injured ankle, and he would visualise them repairing his injured ankle. And just before he'd go off to bed, he'd say, "Rightio, I'll leave you guys for the night, and when I wake up, you will have repaired my ankle a bit more." Well, he ended up getting back to fast bowling, so I think it's about 6 times your body weight goes through your ankle being a fast bowler. He was doing that in less than 2 weeks later. So who knows, without that visualization technique, how long he would have been able to recover. But all the doctors at the time were saying, "Mate, this is absolutely unbelievable, just how quick you are able to recover in this way."
Yes, and that visualization technique, a remarkable practical example, and it also shows a very sensible person known to achieve in a very conventional way, but by being open to that different way of thinking, at very least, we know that's going to draw on placebo effects that work. But is there something else again that might help with that? Are there some, would it be almost like spooky healing forces that when we actually consider something in a certain way, it puts certain energy or whatever into action? That also reminds me of many people who've suffered from cancer might have had some kind of visualization of, for example, a wheelbarrow going along and a tiny little spade digging at the cancer and then filling up the wheelbarrow and then taking it away and discarding it. So there are different kinds of visualizations that people can draw on to assist their health in a certain way. And why ignore that if it's not really costing us anything and it's contemplating the positive, it's contemplating recovery?
Well, as you say, it's so interesting talking about this now, because it seems to me as we talk about this that it's a little bit self-evident that there is something there. And you hear about people all the time who, for example, live longer than modern science suggests that they will. Like, for example, a doctor says you've got this long to live. Well, the doctor's not just pulling that number out of thin air and giving it to them. They're going to be obviously as optimistic as possible when you're talking about the length someone has to live. But at the same time, that's what kind of modern science and that's what rational thought would suggest someone, may live for, but quite often they live longer. And there's a fascinating example that I came across the other day of actually a TED Talk, and I'll put it up on the podcast page for today, which you can access at sykesbills.com.au. And it's from Janine Shepherd, her name is. And similar to actually what you were saying, Dad, about Joe Dispenza, but she was someone who was hit by, I believe, a truck when she was on a training ride. She was an Olympic skier heading to the Olympics, hit by a truck on a training ride, and was told that she'd never walk again. Well, she's delivered this TED Talk, and now she basically goes around and helps coach people as what's called a walking paraplegic. And you just think inherently in the term walking paraplegic, there's something quite unscientific about that. If someone's been declared paraplegic, it's likely that their spinal cord has been severed at a point, or at least it's damaged to the point where it won't work again. So how is someone able to walk without the mechanism of being able to walk in the conventional way that we'd think of it? So clearly she's been able to access some other way to be able to heal herself in order to be able to walk. And so Janine Shepherd is her name, and I will put up her TED Talk because it's absolutely fascinating for a practical example as we're talking about.
And isn't it good that she just didn't accept some conventional explanation of paraplegia and decide that she was never going to walk again? Because if she decided or believed that she'd never walk again, it's hard to imagine how she would have achieved what you described. And so part of what we're talking about is watching out for negative self-limiting beliefs. And the background we've described in the past with this too is we have to watch out for some of the models or explanations we have in mental health care. Because as we've talked about it in the past, if people are going to look at depression, for example, as something which has a genetic cause, it's to do with a biochemical imbalance, and you need medication to address it maybe for the rest of your life, that is such a limited, pessimistic model. Part of what we're looking to encourage people to do is to be open to more optimistic models of looking at things, because if we see ourselves, our mind and bodies, as having a natural way potentially of healing, of bringing back some homeostasis, and we're open to, if you like, holistic forces or influences that can help that come about, hey, then I think we're stacking the odds in our favour.